So one thing I want to warn you about is when you're breaking away from society, when you're kind of seeing through, let's say, red pill, or you're seeing the lack of value in an idea, right? Everybody does something, and then you're like, you don't see value in it. So whatever it is, maybe like say everybody dresses up on Sunday or something, and you just to say a simple idea, and you say, well, I don't understand why I have to dress up all hot clothes in the hot sun for nothing, right? I don't understand why. And then you think, well, I'm seeing through this dumb idea. And like when I was young, I would kind of like become like a little bit of a evangelist. I'll be like, this is like totally stupid, you guys. Like we're all dressing up on Sunday to impress nobody. And it's like Southern California, it's fucking baking hot out there. There's no reason to wear long pants and long shirts on Sunday. Like just dumb, to go eat or to go to church or, whatever. And I would have this idea, and then I'd be like telling everybody the idea, but I didn't realize, because I was naive, I realized that there are people who are very, very resistant to change, and when they see you as somebody who is breaking the norms, they have an almost impossible to understand anger and fear of your new ideas, right? So the danger the way to really live a free life, you have to understand that risks exist. Risks exist. So when you go against, let's say, a societal norm, like you don't believe in marriage, right? Like I don't believe in marriage. I'm not into marriage, right? So that in itself is incredibly, that idea is so radical to a lot of people. And you hear it so many times, and you look at the divorce statistics and, guys getting fucked over. It seems totally obvious to you, right? But you have to take yourself out of that mindset into, let's say, a small religious town mindset or whatever, where the people there, they all stick together and they all, let's just say they all do marriage right. Let's say, for example, like there is no divorce. Always like they're doing it right. And for them, they don't know about the divorce laws. All they see is you trying to destroy their beautiful thing. Like everything that they're based in life on, like their wives, their children. You are an enemy of all the good things that they found in their life. You are trying to destroy. Like your idea might get their son, for example, to not marry, and then they won't have grandkids, and then all of a sudden that like messes everything up, because now you've got this grandkid or son who is not doing his share. He's not fitting into the, he's supposed to, have kids, and, you have kids, and then he's supposed to have kids, and then those kids play together with the other kids. And also by you not fitting in, it makes him very uncomfortable, because let's say that you're happy and you're going to Bangkok and you're traveling around the world, you're going to South America, and you like are in good shape and you're eating well, and you, like, for example, very, very likely you're going to look better on the outside than his other sons, right? Because you're going against society, but like in the old days when you went against society, you basically went criminal. So that was like a negative thing. So it was like basically God, you had purity and you had sin. Sin was hell. Purity was, all the traditional values and everything, right? But today, what's so difficult for people to understand is the ideas that, for example, that I have are so radical because they go against society totally. Like they're not half going against society. They're not going against society to rebel. They're dissecting and laughing at and ridiculing the stupidity of these ideas.
They're infectious.
They're infectious because they're true. Yeah. And like people can see quickly, like this guy is not, because it's one thing just to say, okay, I'm going to rebel. Like your dad tells you to mow the lawn, and then you do, you spray paint the wall or something, right? You're rebelling, right? That's different. Like I'm saying, like there's a better way to live, and it's sustainable, and if you continue in this better way, you make better decisions, minute better decisions over time will lead to a better life.
Right.
And so you end up, let's say, in better shape, having more savings, traveling more, seeing more, maybe having a better job, of course, being healthier, not going to the doctor as much,
Right.
and maybe just being in a better mood. Like generally when you come to a party or a gathering, you're just more vivacious. You just got back from South America. You've seen a lot of things. You got some new ideas. You're feeling inspired by life. Maybe you're just doing something you want to do. Like you might be some kind of hobby. You might be doing some kind of poetry, or you might be trying some new thing. And then all this stuff is, when you go into a very like traditional state environment, even if there are good people, they're not like all hypocrites and everything. It's to them, it's very difficult to accept you, because you're destroying everything, even though you're not meaning to. And if let's say they're really smart and like kind of level-headed people, they know you're not doing it on purpose, but that does not affect the fact that you're destroying their way of life, and you're infecting people they know. Which will further destroy.
Right.
And then to make it even worse, you're actually living a better life. So you're not rebelling where you're not like the old days. It was sin, like I said, it was like following God's way. And sin really wasn't that attractive, really, because you were like gambling and drinking, and you were like destroying your body and going to jail, and like it wasn't really that attractive. In a way, the only attractiveness is that it was like in a very closeted, tied up environment, very restricted. You were breaking out of that, right? But it was really a dead end road. What I'm saying is you can rebel against everything and have a better life and do it better than everybody else, and just leave them all in the dust, right? Really, you're not really leaving them, because you're just making better choices and having a better life. But the bottom line is you leave them in the dust, and they know it. You become more relevant, you have more friends, you have better health, you have more money, you have more freedom, you feel better about yourself because you have better health and you're making better choices. You naturally will smile more, which, when you feel better about yourself, your brain is releasing chemicals, and their brain is releasing chemicals. And over time, these things make a difference. Like when you feel good about yourself, when you make the right choices, you will just naturally be kind of carefree. Mm-hmm. And that is just like a healthy thing, like a healthy plant. Whereas when they are doing things, even if they are kind of good in a way, they're making a lot of compromises, they're pushing down a lot of their values, they're snuffing out a lot of their creativity, and they're kind of like, and so that will kind of take them down over time, like make them feel they'll have longings that they never fulfilled, and because of that they'll have regrets, and those regrets are very powerful. Regrets are super powerful. I've had this in my life where I've got intense hatred from people, and it's the people that know me the best, because you guys that don't really know me, you might think I'm bullshitting, or you might think I'm exaggerating on stuff. So you'd say, well, he's like me, but he's a little bit this way. But if you actually knew me, my ideas are very radical, and I actually live my ideas. So I'm just trying to give you as many as I can, but you don't have the background to really see a lot of stuff, right? Because it's just a video, right? It's just limited information. I'm trying to give it, but the video limits me, in my ability to convey some messages. So people will assume, oh, he's not really doing it, or he's, I like this guy, but he's not really, but when you actually, I'm very intensely radical person, actually. Like I'm like a 60s Black Panther radical at all times with all ideas. And so, and naturally there's going to be a lot of people who will be in this. Like, let me give you an example of things like I knew this woman, right? And she basically hated gay guys. And I had never met anybody who hated gay guys. Like, I knew that there was logically that there was maybe people hate gays. But I grew up in a town that was not gay, but there was like 2 towns over. There was a very, very famous gay town that was just down. And it was a real pretty place. Like it was like a good place to go to watch the sunset, a good place to go eat. So people would go there. A lot of people would go there. And like over 50% of the population of this city back then was registered, or like if you, I forgot, there was like a poll, like over 50% of the population said they were gay in the whole city. So that was like one of the top, might have been the top city in America, because, you know, like San Francisco was famous for being gay back then, but it was a big city, right? There was like business district, there was like a Silicon Valley. There's a lot of areas that were like totally outside of that, you know, Polk Town, Polk Street and all that kind of area, right? And whereas this was a smaller town, and it was like really famous, and like people would move all over the world, even from France, from Germany, they would move to this town, and I grew up near it. So for me, like a fish in water, I, after, you know, living all over like border towns and trailer park, all this kind of stuff, we finally settled in Southern California near this town. And so I was young enough that I just saw this, like there was no internet, obviously, and the newspapers didn't talk about gay stuff. It wasn't, like the media didn't really talk about it, but I saw it as a kid. And so I thought it was very normal. Like I remember I was in my friend's car, we were driving down the street, and it was like traffic, so we were kind of going slow. And we got to this one point, and I looked, and there was 2 guys at like a sunset, and they were like making out, like, looking over the water. And I was like totally shocked, like as a little kid. And I was kind of like a little bit disgusted. I was like, because it was totally against, I had never seen that before. I didn't understand guys could do that. I was like, what are these guys doing? Like, that's what men and women do, you know, kind of thing. It like totally blew my mind as a little kid. But then I quickly got over it. And I thought, oh, guys do that, you know. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was like a big shock to me as a little kid, you know. And I had never seen a picture of guys kissing. Like that would never be in the LA Times or like Newsweek or anything back then, you know. But it was just like, as a kid, you just, whatever's normal, like if you grow up in a criminal area, you just think everybody just commits crime. It's just like normal. Like your dad has a fake insurance company, sells insurance, but there's not really an insurance company, you know, and your brother steals hubcaps, and your uncle, you know, runs some kind of, you know, underground scam. You know, like, it's just like, I had a friend who grew up like that, and that was totally normal to him, right? So when he got out of the environment, it took him a long time to realize that, you know, everybody's not always running a scam. Like he actually kind of thought that was like everybody's kind of running some kind of criminal, something like is criminal somewhere, you know, and like that's not the way most places are. You know, he grew up in a very extreme immigrant criminal area, and it was like very unique area. And so we whatever we grow up with, we think is normal. So for me, I grew up with guys making out in the next town. And so when we would drive, any time we drove through the town, you might see 2 guys like with whatever, like all tanned up with like, you know, tight t-shirts or whatever, and a convertible BMW. And like, you just kind of saw this whenever we drove through the town. So this was like a normal thing. Like, you know, you would see guys were always like talking like lovey-dovey in restaurants. And it was like waiters would hit on straight guys. Like I whenever I was kind of came through that town, which I'd say like maybe we went there, like it was a real nice place to go actually. So you probably went there maybe like twice a month, even though it was only like 3 miles away or 5 miles away. It was like a million miles to a kid, you know. So maybe like twice a month we would end up going through that town, and I would experience that. And so for me, like and to this day, I have nothing against nothing bothers me. Like I don't care. Like a lot of people are very against all this stuff, like anything, like they're against some kind of transgender or gay guys. I don't care at all. Like it doesn't bother me at all. Like I just, whatever anybody wants to do, like really doesn't, it just like, it's totally fine with me. Like I think people go through phases. I think that nothing is permanent. You know, a lot of people will try things and experiment with things. I don't give a fuck. Like I don't think it's weird. It just doesn't bother me at all. Like, and I think that's why there is actually quite a few gay guys who listen to Ronin Man. There's quite a few. Because they know, like somehow they know I just don't give a fuck. Like I really do not give a fuck. I'm not saying I don't give a fuck. Like I don't give a fuck. And I will never give a fuck. It's like whatever people want to do is totally fine with me. And that's why the episode, I was probably hinting at it when I said, whatever gets your dick hard, your dick is it's like a compass telling you which way you should go. What I was saying is like, just totally be yourself. Like, you don't even have to even talk about it. Just do whatever the fuck, like, doesn't even matter to me. So, and again, there's nothing secret there. Like a lot of people, if you even say this kind of stuff, they think you're hinting that you are gay.
Yeah.
And this is what's so funny to me, because this is so anti-Ronin, man. Because if I was something, right, what I'm saying is to be yourself, right? So why would I tell you to be yourself while I'm lying to you? Like, why the fuck would I do that? Now, if I was gay, I would start making out with guys on the beach today. Like, I don't give a fuck. And I would talk about it on Ronin, man. Like, I literally don't care. Like, it's not, like, it's just like, it just doesn't, like, the dick does not get hard that direction for me. And that's why I don't do it. That's the only reason why I don't do it. Literally the only reason. There's nothing else. There's no morals. There's nothing. I'm just like, the dick doesn't get hard that direction. So I will not make out with guys, So that's it, period. So what I'm saying is just like what I'm saying, right? So just be yourself. So, but that idea is very, very extreme, actually. These type of ideas, when you really think about how these ideas lay down in real fucking life, they are extreme, because a lot of people are living a fake life, right? So they are living values to fit into something, and it has nothing to do with red pills, nothing to do with women or any of that stuff, nothing to do with family courts, nothing to do with any of that crap. It's like other stuff like that, and like what they want to do with their life, what they enjoy doing. They, from the ground up, their life is built on a bunch of unstable foundations, in my mind, right? So when you find your true self, right, when you find your true north, right, whatever it is, and you find your balance, and you become comfortable with yourself, and you start to adapt more and more things like that, your life will become much more stable, because you will be one of the few guys in history, really, who's building his life on his real self, right? So you become very, just like let's say some kind of jojitsu wushu master, where you are totally balanced in every direction, because you know what's behind you, you know what's in front of you, you can sense what's above you, you know how grippy the ground is below you, you know your muscles, where you move your body in like fluid motion with your hips, the power of movement. You're doing these natural movements. You're aware of your surroundings, because what most people are doing is it's all fake. Like, they might have a very good life, but like one foot is on a box that is very unstable, and they have a total blind spot in one part behind them, right? Or even straight in front of them, right? And so whenever that comes, it just hits them right in the face, because they have not dealt with that part of their life, right? And so I'm not saying like anything like, be gay or anything. What I'm saying is like, that's just an example of one thing that you might be doing that's totally based on maybe what you think you should do, what your family thinks you should do, what society thinks you should do. And so it's about reevaluating all those kind of things and like just cutting them out, because like I have a friend, like he's young and he's a real computer guy, right? And you would think that he loves to game, like playing, video games. He never plays video games. And I just love it, because he just kind of realized it was a waste of time when he was like, 15 or whatever. And he wanted to like succeed. And he realized that even though all his friends that are into computers, like the way that he is, they were all into games. And so he started to think that if you're really into, you have to kind of be like that. And then he totally like accepted himself and realized like he does not want a game ever. Like he has no interest in gaming. And so he never games, right? And then he realized like, he's from the UK. So he went to the pubs, or he saw the pub kind of, attitude. And he looked at those people as basically drunken fools, and he never was interested in the pubs. And then he like watched football, and he just thought the whole thing is pretty stupid, being into like football. soccer, right? The whole like soccer teams and soccer jerseys and like knowing what's going on in English Premier League, that never interested him. So he like shed off 3 of the big dangers of where he grew up, because they were dangerous for him because he just had no interest in them. He saw no value in them at all. He just saw them as just a bunch of fake people just doing, I'm guessing like just doing dumb things that they just for no reason. Like he just they never crossed. He doesn't have to struggle with not playing games. Like he just like sees it as a huge waste of time. And football, it's just a bunch of drunken idiots cheering on laundry, uniforms or whatever. I don't know what he sees. I don't know the exact. I'm stealing that from Seinfeld. It's like cheering for laundry, because he realized that his football team had all changed. They were all new players, and he said, "You're just cheering for laundry," And he's like, "Oh my God," and like that's kind of what I think my friend kind of thought. Like, I'm just cheering for laundry. That's what people were just doing. And anyway, I actually like basketball. I'm not saying you are cheering for laundry. I'm just saying that his kind of natural, let's say, wushu master thing was not standing on a box of making football into something that it wasn't for him. It just was nothing for him. It was just for him. He might, maybe 30 years later, he'll find interest in some football thing. But he's in no hurry about that. And obviously he probably won't, because he just could see through it and he was not interested. So I think that the way that as you do these, as you follow your true self, right, in all the little areas, like whether it's what people like to do or even what you used to do. Because like I have this computer, right, and I love my Mac with the M1 processor, right, and I really like it. But it's possible that someday I could not use the internet ever again. Like I could just lose interest in the internet and be into some new thing, some new way of thinking, right? If I lose interest in the internet and in computers, I could, like even my old self could become one of those things, like cheering for laundry, where no longer does it mean anything to me, but I'm just doing it. I'm just trudging in this old road, in this old well-worn path that I took before. But now I'm not interested in it. So when I say like the radical ideas, it's not just the radical ideas of society, but in my own ideas, my own traditions, I'm ready to turn in a moment's notice on. Because when they're not interesting for me, I'm done with them. I'm totally done with them. And the same with Ronin Men. Like I said many times, I could just stop making Ronin Men if I'm just not interested in it. If I don't feel like people are learning or nobody's gaining from it, or like people are just not misunderstanding it, I'll just go do something else. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I will. That could happen. Just beware. That could happen in a moment's notice, because as soon as I lose interest, I just go off on, my mind is like, okay, now I'm interested in this new thing, right? And that is the balance I'm talking about. It's like you're not prolonging stuff. I mean, I'll write it to the end. I'll write it, like until it's done for me. I'm not saying like as soon as I see that it's losing interest, I'm like, I have to cut it off, because that would be breaking my own rules. Because I still want to ride that horse more, right? There's still more to, there's still miles left in that thing. So I'm going to ride it for longer until I realize, oh, I'm not interested in this anymore. And then I shift over. And the danger with this thinking is that nobody will ever understand you, even other red pill guys, because there will be no way to predict what you're going to do next. See, so like one of the best, deepest analysis of me was when I was in high school. I was a good volleyball player. I wasn't like a great volleyball player, and I didn't have the confidence to really be as good as I was. I could have been on a varsity team. And our varsity team, like a lot of them went to win the gold medal in 84.
What?
It was when Southern California kind of came through with volleyball. It was right that period. So I was like pretty damn good volleyball player. Like anywhere else I would have been like really good, But I was not quite as good as, like I played against this guy. What was his name? Tobias, I think. Anyway, he went to the Limbs, and one of my friends went to the Limbs, and I played against him, and he kicked my ass. Like he was like significantly better than me. So I'm not saying I was that level, but I was good, and I remember like how much better he was than me, and that taught me that it probably wasn't the road for me, because I remember I went up to block him. I'd snuck into this expensive sports club. Or maybe, maybe I went in with my brother-in-law's dad. Yeah, he brought me in. That's what it was. And somehow I got into this expensive sports club. And then I saw this guy, and he was just like, he was so tall. He was like real tall. Like, I don't remember how tall, but to me, he seemed like he was like so tall. And he was real strong, like long arms. And he would come up and he would, every single spike, like whenever I tried to spike to the 10-foot line. There's a line for the 10-foot line, right? So you want to like do a one, which is a short set, and then you crush it down to the 10-foot line or inside the 10-foot line. So I would always try to crush it inside that line. But for this guy, every single hit was inside the 10-foot line. Like, he could be beyond the 10-foot line, jump in the air, and still crush it into the 10-foot line.
What?
Yeah, he was like that. He was really good. And there was a lot of guys like that on the team, you know. And I was like, for me, I had never seen that. I was like, what the fuck? So anyway, I thought, this fucking guy, I'm going to block this guy. Because I was a pretty good jumper, you know. I thought, I'm going to fucking block this guy, no matter what it takes. He's going to beat us. There's no question about that. We were not going to win. But I'm going to block him, and that's a big deal, a guy like him. So I jumped as high as I could. I mean, literally, I went up really high. And I had my hands, it's like, I was like a laser focused on the ball. And I went to block it, but what kind of I miscalculated was I was up so high, and he was up so high. Usually what I'm doing, I was jumping up and my hands were just, let's say, a foot above the net. So when your hands are a foot above the net, they just have to be vertical to block it.
Right.
But when you're up, let's say you're up way above the net, 2 or 3 feet, then you kind of have to put your hands forward and you have to choose where your hands go because your arms can no longer block anymore.
Right.
So because you know what I mean? Like the physics of it. You can't be so close to the net because you're going to hit the net. Whereas when you jump just a little bit over the net, you can be right like 2 inches from the net, or you can even be over the net, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas when you're really high up in the air, you can be over the net. That's fine as long as you don't touch the net. But it's only your hands. And then your arms are like facing forward, so they're not blocking anything. So right. I had never seen that before because I must have been so inspired to block him that I had jumped way higher than usual. So anyway, I went to block him and I realized, oh shit, I can't no longer do this like weird robotic thing where I had done before where I just put my arms straight up. So I'm like, oh my God, I got to like go for the ball. And I went up for the ball and it was like lower than I thought. And then he hit it and it hit me right in the nuts. Oh. And it just took the wind out of me. And I was just like, oh. And then I realized, he was like, there was another level in my volleyball. But anyway, like, so I don't know where I started. What do you guys remember when I started that story? If you think of when I started that, tell me. But basically, I'm always adjusting based on my understanding of the world, feeling, and so I'm not like a robot continuing on something. So it's very, very, I think, oh yeah. You would never know where I was going. So when I was playing volleyball in high school. So I was we had a volleyball class, and it was mainly like the volleyball team. So we would play together every morning. It was early in the morning, first class. And I remember this super hot girl. For some reason, I couldn't believe it. She was like famous in the school. She fell in love with me. And she would sit there and watch my game. I couldn't believe it because my self-confidence was not high yet. I couldn't understand why she was watching me. She was my girlfriend and everything, but she was like too hot to be watching me. It didn't make sense to me. I didn't value it because I was like, this is going to fall apart any minute now. This girl's like, there's no way she's going to watch me in front of everybody else because there was like a lot of cool guys because our volleyball team was kind of the thing in Southern California. We didn't play football. There was no hockey. Our football team was famous for losing 56-0 on our like prom night or whatever it was, the big night, right? We'd lose like whatever night that was. I can't remember. But it was the big night. We'd lose get crushed. What is it?
Homecoming.
Yeah, homecoming. We were proud of it. We're like, we lost 56-0. Yeah, our team was the worst. And we just didn't give a fuck because we didn't care about baseball, football. Like our big thing was our surfing team was number 1 in the U.S. for 18 years in a row.
18 years?
Yeah. And then we lost the year after I graduated. But it wasn't because of me because I sucked, as I talk about a lot. Yeah, so it definitely wasn't because of me. But we lost the next year to the next high school. And then we got it back, but then we lost again. So we never had that long run we had. So it was volleyball, surfing, and water polo. Those were the cool sports in my school. So it was very different than other schools. But, okay, so anyway, so I was playing volleyball in this class. She's watching me. And I was getting good at crushing. I was like, I like to crush a fucking ball. Like, I really like it, And so anyway, so I jumped up, and I was going to crush it. And my friend Arian, he said something to me. And it's really the most insightful thing I ever heard. He knew me very well because we would go. He was the guy who didn't give me water when I almost died in the desert. Like in that one episode, if you listen to that one. Yeah. Oh. Him and this other guy, Rex.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was still my friend. I didn't give a fuck. Anyway. Yeah. But he was, because we got along in other ways. I don't hold resentments. So anyway, so we had a lot in common. And he went up to block me and he said to me, he goes, I got it. Because he was real smart. Arian was real fucking smart. He is real smart. He goes, I got it. He goes, he used to play Dungeons and Dragons, and he was that kind of guy. Like, it was totally different than my other friends. You know, him and Rex were like Dungeons and Dragons and backpacking kind of guys, right? And so he said, I got it. He goes, I know why it's so hard to block you. He goes, I know. And he goes, you don't know where you're going to hit it. He said, everybody else, when they jump up, they will decide where they're going to hit it, and they will fake you one way, and they'll hit it another way. He says, you don't know where you're going to hit it. And so there's no way to read you, because when you jump up, it can go any direction, and you don't know which way it's going to go. So there's no way for me to read you, because you're not faking anything. So, and I thought, well, what am I doing? You know, afterwards, I thought about that. And I was like, I thought everybody was like me. I didn't have a plan till the last thousandth of a second, right? Because it was until I would get up there, I would jump up there, and I would look at the way the ball was spinning and the way how close the net was, where the guys were, how much floor space was open, how comfortable I was in my swing, like how far my arm was back, like, you know, which direction I was and where the line was on the left and the right and the back line, and how many guys were trying to block me, and, you know, kind of like if I had timed my jump right. So if I was coming down it where I was going to crush it, just the perfect movement, or if I was kind of like coming down too early and having to kind of hit it out more straight, you know, or I was going to have to dink it or whatever. I didn't like dinking it. I like crushing it, you know. But anyway, so I would go up, and then I had no plan, like what I was going to do with the ball. But then I would like look at it, analyze it. It was almost like I was in slow motion, like watching the ball, watching him. And it's like, and then I would like move my arm back. I would think, I'm going to hit it over to the right. And then I'm like, no, he's to the left. Yeah, I'm not going to hit it to the right. You know, like he's to the right. I'm not going to hit it there, you know. And then I'm like, oh, he's pretty close to the net. I think I can hit it straight down, you know, his hands, and then inside, and then, you know, that way. Or I can see like to the left, there's like 1 meter to the line, because I say I'm on the left, you know, I'm like a left wing kind of thing. I don't remember what the position is, but anyway, I'm on the left, and I'm a striker. So I'm up there. I'm up ready to spike it, and I'm doing a 2, by the way. A 2 or a 3 set, if you guys play volleyball. And so I come up, and I got plenty of time, and I'm looking at it. I got a lot of options. And then finally I realized, okay, I could hit it I could dink it and get an easy, you know, point. But I don't like easy points, and I don't like dinking it. Because to me, I consider dinking a total pussy. I hate dinking, even though it's super easy. Because to me, it's not about winning. It's about, I never cared about winning either. I talked about that in another episode.
Yeah.
The winning just meant nothing to me. Because I beat one person, it doesn't mean, you know. So anyway, it's all about it's about the beauty of the hit or beauty of the block. It's the perfection of that moment. That's all I cared about. If I had one perfection moment in a game, like real perfection, very few people reach real perfection in their life, right? But if I had a few real perfection moments, I felt good about it. Like I was like, fuck yeah, that was gold. And people would be like, well, you lost the game. To me, it's like, whatever. Like I didn't care, because I knew that if I focused on that perfection over time, I was going to become very badass, because I would find perfection in different ways, you know, movements. So I think that's kind of like an extension, actually, of my philosophy. It might have started in sport, where I'm not trying to, like, to me, winning is like this fake thing, because you're just beating this unknown person with unknown abilities on an unknown day, with unknown kind of what I consider cheating maneuvers or whatever. Like, to me, it just doesn't impress me when someone wins a gold medal or anything. I want to watch it and watch what they're doing And then I might be very impressed by his performance, right? But I might just consider it totally cheesy too, because there's no challenge there, or whatever it is, he did it the easy way, who did it the winning way, and the other guy did it the artistic way, or he did it like the beautiful way, the real way, and then that wasn't the point way, because the points are not the perfect way to keep score of life. They're not. For me, it's not at all like it's a bastardized way. I mean, it's a good way. It's like money. You can count money, see how successful you are. There's ways that you can. There are ways to judge things based on numbers, but they're not perfect at all. And I think that's the other thing. I can see through, like someone will come to me successful in money or sports, and I will see through them if they're faking it. And people are very, very offended by that, because a lot of people there just expect me to have deep respect for them. But I might not, because I might look at them as having cheating the system. And I'm not against that. I'm not saying I'm not, but I don't respect it. I don't respect it. And it's not because I don't respect it, because I'm trying not to respect it. I don't respect it in myself. Of course I don't respect when they do it. It's just, to me, it's just like, oh yeah, you could do that. You could do that way, but that is lame. And you could get all the accolades and everybody else can think you're a great guy because you can show them the medals based on the rules that were the best rules they can make, trying to quantify an unquantifiable thing. For me, I always look past all those and see what's really going on here. And I see a lot of fake people who are, let's say unsuccessful, and they don't even understand what they're really doing. Maybe they're doing more things right than they think, right? And the successful might not. I'm not saying this is like a rule. I just thought of that. But that is possible. There could be a guy who's really doing something beautiful. And maybe the best example is let's say an author who writes great books and they're not appreciated in his lifetime. But after he dies, those books were beautiful and they were very appreciated. And a lot of careers are like that, where the guy, his art isn't appreciated at the moment, but it's appreciated later in life. For me, I would appreciate it in my life anyway, even if no one else appreciated it. Because it's not about those other things. Although, I'm not saying I don't care about those other things. You know what I'm saying? I do like those things. And I'm not one of these guys who, is actively against money. I'm totally fine with having a lot of money and being successful and winning a gold medal. That's all totally great. But there's things that are more important than that for me. And that's true to yourself. Right? And true to what is really real, right? So when Arian told me that, I really thought about that. And that was a really insightful thing to say, is I was the guy that didn't know what he was going to do. Now that might sound erratic to you, but it's very not erratic at all. It's almost based on the laws of physics. Because I'm going up and I'm analyzing everything in the ball movement, in the wind, in the distance, in the height, in the swing, in the movements. And also I'm thinking about this, the score too, right? Do we need to get to the point, right? I am calculating that too. And the wind that's moving the ball. And I'm looking, and then also the beauty of the shot itself, which is to me the most important thing that makes me the most wood, right? So, and then I'm at the last second, I can feel that my hand is softening up, right, for the hit. I'm going back, and I feel the power. It's when you're playing volleyball, the power is in the pull down. If you put your arm above your head now, feel if you push forward, it's not very strong. But if you pull down, feel that strength. It's your chest, and you even feel it in your hips, you're pulling down the ball. And that's the movement. That's the movement for crushing, for the volleyball. So when you get up there and your hand is just right, it's not too rigid, it's not too loose, and it's going back and it's coming down at full speed. It's not like a power move lifting weights. It's more like a combination of a power move, a pull up, and a golf swing. A golf swing is if you try to do a golf swing too hard, you'll fuck it up. It's about just this, is letting the ergonomics of your body carry the head of the club, whoosh, And that's where the power comes from. It doesn't come from power. So a weightlifter is generally not going to be able to hit the ball very far. Generally, because he's going to put too much muscle into it. It's about, you are using power, like John Daly, he had power. But it's more important is that whip of the thing. And you're using that, and there's a different kind of power in being able to whip it powerfully, but whip it, use that whip, kind of like when you're snapping a towel. The power is, it's in that snap that you're getting, right? There's that whip. And so when you're hitting the volleyball, it's a combination of like a hard pull down with a whip. And it's like you're whipping it, and then when you get it, when you finally, the ball hits your hand, you've got your hand like down because you're up high, and you're just like crushing it with that powerful movement. And when I would do that, it would go up and hit the rafters of the gymnasium, and that's when you crushed it, And you hit the rafters, And I always was trying to, really crush the shit out of it. Sometimes you don't want the rafters because sometimes you're going for the back of the court. So it's not like that's the only good hit. There's a million good hits. But that's one of them. That's one of the cool ones that gets you all fired up, right? And so I think my life is like that. Like whether what career I'm going to do or what we're going to do today, everything is waited until that moment of impact when I can analyze all the factors that are there and I can make the best decision at that second, right? So when you do that, it's hard at first because you will start on careers and then realize they're not you, or you're going to start on a hobby and realize it's a total joke, or you'll have a certain haircut and realize that you're not at all being who you should be, or you have you're acting a certain way in public that is not you. You are more able to take up space. You're more able to speak in public than you're acting, or you have something that you're not, like the cap is on you, like the limiter on the engine, and you're doing that for no reason. So it's not just about choosing. Sometimes you have to let the limiter off. Other times you're living by society's norms or rules, or maybe you have somebody you respect who really would be let down by you by doing some certain thing. And so you don't want to let them down. And then and the way that you become that wushu master who's deciding at the last moment based on the best decision is by one by one, you're putting these things in your life that are the real you based on the moment, based on the options, the best option for you then. Because you might want to, like, let's say, make a steam engine boat. Like, you might be very good at making steam engine boats, but because technology's moved past steam engines, you can't do that. Like, I'm not saying you necessarily, you have to adjust to what's going on in the world at the same time. Like, things change, right? They might change the height of the net, or the height, the lines might change, or the rules. So you do have to adjust to other things. You're not like totally always doing exactly the way, you know what I mean? You are aware. And because you're not encumbered by a lot of limiters on yourself, fake things that you base things on other things, and you don't have a lot of ego and pride, you're able to say, oh, I'm doing this all wrong. I'm going to change this. That is freedom. That ability to change and to not be, that's why I say it's so important to be wrong. It's not because it's important to be wrong. It's not because you want to be humble. It's because you want to be able to live your best life. And you are wrong. So you're the last guy who won't admit it. It's better just to admit it and then just be wrong for a while. And then, when you're wrong for a while, you will look around you. You won't have a big ego about it. You won't be all butthurt. You'll just be like, oh, that was wrong. That didn't work because this, or maybe because that. Let me think about it more, And then you can kind of make a better decision. And you are able to fluidly move between changes and adapt even as you get older, because you base your life on your real self, and because you're able to be wrong, and because you're able to adapt to new things and try new things, and because you let go of these things, okay, and this is the thing people don't realize. It's like the cup of coffee example. You have the half a cup of coffee. You have a cup of coffee that's cold. You pour half of it out and you pour half a new cup in, and it's not going to be warm. And then you pour another half out, pour another half in, and then it's not going to be a hot cup of coffee. The only way is to pour the whole thing out and then just get a whole fresh cup of coffee, right? So with ideas, a lot of times people try to like slowly change things. You just have to, a lot of times you have to say to yourself, I don't know what I'm going to do now, but I'm not going to do that. So I don't know what I'm going to do now. So he says sometimes you find your true self. Other times you need to give yourself time, okay, of nothing in order to see the world differently. Let the ego go and then watch people with a clear eye and feel how you feel about the things they're doing, the things you're seeing now. And then experiment with a few things. And then you might find that new drink that you want to fill your cup up with, right? So it's not always just choosing or knowing the real you. This is what I hate about SJWs. One thing I really hate is they're like, find the real you, be the real you. You are creating the real you as you learn more about the world and about yourself. You cannot find the real you. If you chip away at the rock of yourself, the real you is not in there. The real you is developed through hard work and discovery and seeing new things. Now, there are things that are in there that are real you, but it's not, you're not chipping away to find Michelangelo inside yourself. It's just a bunch of rock. But by knowing there is a few things, like there's characters of the rock that are real, right? And then there's also so many different ways of being and there's so many things you could become that you don't even know. You could be a paperweight, you could be, to use that example, there's a million things you could do, or you could be a gravity bomb, or whatever. Like there's a million things that a rock could be. And so sometimes, like that's why travel is so valuable. It's not that you're going to have so much fun traveling. It's that you are going to be exposed to new ideas. And most people travel don't learn anything. But if you are doing what I'm saying, then when you do travel, you will constantly be reevaluating your whole life, essentially. Because one, you're able to say you're wrong. You're able to know that you could be living a stupid life that's a total waste of time and change, and it doesn't hurt you. It only helps you. Every time you make these difficult adjustments, you have to know, here's where you can get your kind of the lotion for your ego, is that most people can never change. So they're going to go to the grave with his old idea. And they're going to look dumber and dumber to themselves and anybody who watches them. And like me, when they come to me and say, oh, I did this thing, I'm going to ask them how they did it. I'm going to watch them. And then this is what really terrifies people about me in my life. And this happens to girls and guys, is they will realize that I will see through them. Because I'm so honest with myself, I will see through them. And even if they haven't seen through themselves or allowed it, it is terrifying to be around me for some people, because they know that eventually I'm going to see, because I'm just going to watch them, I'm going to see what they're doing, and I'll see where they're compromising, and I it's fine, but eventually I'll get to the heart of it, and then I'll be like, that guy is secretly this or that, and I'll see it, and I might not say anything, but the people that are really smart, that know me for a long time, they know I will see it, and they're like, fuck, I can't hang out with this guy if I'm not going to be like this, because it's too painful to have one person be able to see all the dumb things I'm doing, and I think that I don't mean to do it. If you don't know me that well, you might not know what I'm talking about, and that's fine. But if you're too close to me, then I'm going to start, because I've been so honest with myself, and I've changed so many times that I kind of know, a lot of things don't work. I kind of already know, there's just certain things that no matter how well you do them, you can fool everybody else, but I'm going to know. I will just know. And so my really good friends who are compromising, they will say to me, they will say, they will tell me alone. They'll say, I know, don't say it. Like, I know, but nobody else sees it. So I'm happy with my life the way it is. And I'm just going to do this. And I'll be like totally cool because that honesty and that humor about the thing, to me, is enough. Like that's, they get it. They might not be willing. You might not always be able or willing to fix everything, but for a number of reasons, let's say for your kids, something like that, you might be making compromises that you wouldn't usually make as a single guy, right? There might be things in your life that you might decide rationally as an extreme, Ronin idea guy, but you might say, I know that, and I'm happy with that, and I'm willing to do that because here's the reason, is because of this other idea or this other factor that I want this to be like this, and I understand, and that is an enormous freedom for them too because they're able to let that steam out with me because they don't have to fake it, And it's the best example was one I said before in the pregnancy issue was one of my friends, John, his name is John, and I don't even know his last name. I knew him so long ago. But John was a PhD, and he was super smart. And so we were in Japan, and John had this girlfriend. And John's girlfriend, he had to go back to the States for some reason. And he came back, and she was pregnant. And he had been there, and he had left. And so she said, it was your kid. And so then he told everybody his girlfriend was pregnant. Everybody was very happy to hear that. And I said, John, what day did you leave Japan? When did you, I remember you left. It was pretty long ago. What day was that? And he said the date. And I said, well, when was the baby, born, right? And or when is the baby going to be born, And then he's like, this date. And I said, well, John, that's not possible, And John is an extremely, in many ways, he's very confident guy and able to face things. So as long as I didn't tell anybody, it was just me and him. And he looked at it and he's like, yeah, but we went to the doctor and the doctor said that sperm can live inside there for a couple of weeks. And it's possible there's, that could live that day. And I said, John, not that long, not that many weeks. I don't think that's possible. You better check into that. And so we never talked about it again. And everybody was congratulating him. And he was a happy father. Okay, and actually he was a happy father. And so when the kid was about 10 years old, I ran into him. And I was like, hey, John, how you doing? And he started laughing. He was super nice to me. And he said, he whispered in my ear, he goes, the kid looks nothing like me. And there was a little secret between the two of us. And he said, but, he said, I'm very happy. He goes, at that time in my life, he goes, I was ready to have a child. He was in his 50s. He wanted to raise a kid, And he said, I was at the phase, and I said, I'm very happy with my life, even though I know it's not my kid. And I was very, very happy to hear that because I didn't want to hear that John was miserable. I knew the kid wasn't his. I was the one guy who didn't fool myself. I was like, no way can sperm live that long. It wasn't that far out of the realm of possibilities. I'm not saying it was a year. It's not like that. It was just weeks. But it was weeks past the possibility the sperm could live. Okay, it was impossible. And so I never, ever entertained that he was his wife was the Virgin Mary or something. The laws of physics were broken for her. I never, not even 1 second, not even 1% of me. I was like, that's not possible, John. And I would talk to him a few times back then. I said, John, I want to remind you that it's not your kid. And you can walk away. It's not your kid. Just leave. If you want to leave, just walk away. Do not feel any guilt. And John's like, well, how can I do that? I said, John, think about it so this woman stuck another guy's dick. She sucked on another guy's dick and she kissed another guy. She unzipped his pants. She did all the stuff you have to do to get a dick hard. And then he fucked her right after you left. You were just out the door to America. And she was fucking this guy in the heat. He was doing all the things that you do, the kissing, the dates afterwards. I said, remember this. This is what happens when babies are made. Like, don't kid yourself. This woman was absolutely cheating on you. It wasn't just that she got pregnant once. It takes a lot of fucking to get pregnant. Okay. I said, John, like, it's not a one-time thing. Every girl who's from a religious town, she always got pregnant in one time, because that's the easiest way for her to accept responsibility and also to avoid being a slut, or to avoid whatever it is that the town. I'm not calling her that. Believe me, I love girls who are nice to guys, who are good to guys. That never bothered me. But the town's version, the religious version, whatever it is, that thing that she was avoiding by lying, right? And that is the compromise that she will say it was a one-time thing. But let me just tell you now, like, it's difficult to get pregnant. Like, it can happen. Like, you might go to Vegas, like, literally, you can go to Vegas, stick in a few quarters, put a few dollars on the table, and be rich and never work the rest of your life. It is very possible. It can happen. It is in the billionth of trillionth of possibilities that you could put in that money. Like, let's say you could put in that money and win, like, say $10,000. Then take that $10,000 and put it on something else, and then win $10 million. Take that $10 million, turn that right into $1 billion. That is possible, statistically. But it is so unlikely that, in fact, it's never, that I know of, has never happened, right? The possibility is that low. So I don't entertain those type of things. Like, it's just like crypto, quantum encryption. Quantum encryption is just a number. It's a very difficult to guess number. Every wallet, private keys are a guessable number.
Right.
It's just, you could just write down any number. Like, right now you get a pen, write down a bunch of numbers, rebuild a wallet, and you might get $1 trillion, in Bitcoin. Because that might be the secret that unlocks somebody's private keys who has $1 trillion. It's possible, right? But because the odds are so infinitesimally low that it's considered strong encryption, because it's basically never going to happen, right? And so you have to know that. You have to be comfortable with the gray areas of life. Like, everything can be guessed and just could happen. But again, so anyway, that's the way I talk to people. That's the way I talk to John. And I told him about the sucking of the dick and the coming and the sweat, because I thought that was important for him to know. And I said, what were you doing 2 weeks after you got home? And he says, well, I was writing her letters. And I said, well, show me those letters, or tell me what you wrote. And he says, well, I was like, telling her how much I loved her. And I said, oh, really? Okay. And what was she telling you? Oh, how much she missed me. And I said, oh, okay. And were you sweating, having great sex with some woman? He said, no, I was totally faithful to her. And I said, okay, all that considered, how do you feel about this child? How do you feel about raising this baby with someone who would tell you that and do that type of thing? And I got him to really realize she was not a nice person. She was not a good person. Like, she was no angel, But for John, the reason why he's happy today is because he's now probably in his 80s, right? And he's got a child, or if he's alive, and he's very happy with his life because something else overshadowed that. See, but for me, I'm going to always get into the truth of something and break all those rules. Like, it's not a one-time thing for me, because I know that infinitesimally chance, but I also know how I fuck women and all that stuff. And I think when you realize a girl cheated on you, you have to understand exactly what she did and how she acted. And this is how you can get a gut feeling about whether you want to be with her, right? And who she really is. What kind of person is she, right? What kind of person would do that to you, right? When you're being good to her, like, what kind of person? And I'm not giving you the answer. I'm just saying, like, you have to be able to face the ugly truth about odds, about people, and you might find, like John, that you will walk directly into raising someone else's kid. You might find that because you have something else. It's like the guy who's secretly gay. You have something else. You might walk away from a beautiful woman. He might walk away from freedom because he wanted to raise a child. He wanted a family life, and he got what he wanted. And at the end of the day, it didn't matter to him at all, because the kid's a valuable kid, right? Even if it's not your kid, kids are valuable. Kids are enjoyable. Like, kids do cool things, and they're interesting, and they develop, and child development is one of the most interesting things you could ever study. It's like so fascinating, child development. If you want to study something as a hobby that's infinitesimally just down to the detail interesting, like child development is one of the most interesting topics ever. And because you'll learn about your own brain and human and animals and any living thing, you'll learn all kinds of interesting things about life by studying child development, just as a hobby, right? I started studying it when I got this girl pregnant. I started studying it, and I became incredibly fascinated by it. It was so interesting to me. That's one of the saddest things about me not being with my kid right now, is I know so much about child development now, even though I didn't get a degree in it. But I know a lot about things that could help them or would easily be misunderstood, and what to do instead or how to develop that. And that bums me out, not being able to develop my own kid in these precious days. That really bums me out. That because I wouldn't have known that before, and I would have just been there like throwing the ball around, or this is red and green. Like, I wouldn't have understood a lot of things, but now I do. And of course, there's more to learn. I was just thinking I should get back to it, learning older child development, because I was studying infant child development in like 1 to 3, basically. I was studying, I wasn't studying 10 to 11 to 12 because I wasn't thinking about that time, right? I was thinking about, 2 weeks and 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, So the thing is that when you are both in touch with yourself, able to change, can see through yourself, see through other people, see through the world, you become very dangerous, because a lot of people have a lot of fucking lies, and there's a lot of fakeness, and they could be looking very good in the eyes of society, right? They could have a great job, right? They could be a mayor. They could be a judge. They could be a doctor or a lawyer. And as much as we joke about these things, let's say you joke about lawyers being dishonest. At the end of the day, a lawyer is a very respected profession, right? A doctor is a pretty... But if you know something and you see through people, the problem is so many people are living a lie that you don't know who you're going to really offend, because they will know that you are the one guy who can see through them. You have that X-ray vision by watching them to see that they're totally living a dishonest life. And that is painful. Oh, especially things like regret. Okay? Missed opportunities. Like I said, because I know, like, one of the things I did in my 20s, in my early 20s, I traveled the world. I went to something like 50 countries before I was 25. And I was young, and I was full of energy. And I went out there into the world, into the sunshine, a burst of sunshine, pre-internet. And I put basically the controls for my spacecraft to the center of the sun, because total destruction. Because on that trip, I ran out of money several times and had to survive and make it happen with, what I was willing to do, whatever I had to do to survive. Ended up finding good solutions, actually. But the fear was there that I was not going to, be able to, I was going to end up begging or whatever, because I was going to stay out there. Because I knew once I went home, the spell would be broken. Like, my only chance was right now. It's kind of like when you ran away from home when you're a kid. Let's say you're in 3rd grade. You know that you can do everything now before you get caught by your parents. Like, you better do it now, because whatever it is, once you get caught, you'll be under more strict surveillance, and you got to do it now. Here's the chance. You've broken all the rules. You broke out of prison. It's time to like do those things you wanted to do. You know, I knew that the gravity of life would pull me back in if I went back. If I kidded myself, say I'm going to go back and make some money and continue traveling. I knew that my type of freedom in traveling was not going to happen, right? And so I was willing to set the controls for the center of the sun like 3 times, total destruction. And each time when I got right there, I found a way to get around it and survive. And like the sawmill job, the selling art on the streets, the getting the refund for the ticket at the little office in Singapore, like just all the little things. Oh, and using the ticket to Jakarta to use it to Sumatra, which was the wrong ticket on the wrong plane, because I couldn't afford even a few $100s for a new ticket, because that would bum out my high. Like I had to go to the end of this. In this case, I had a 2-month visa. Like there was a different restriction on each part of my trip, but in Indonesia, that was my last country. I had 2 months, and I needed to somehow survive those last 3 weeks because I had something I wanted to do. I wanted to go to Bali, and back then Bali was so cool, and I really wanted to go to Bali. It was more expensive than like the jungle, which is really cheap. 50 cents a night in the jungle, with breakfast included back then. So like I could survive there a lot longer, right? Bali, I had to pay rent. I had to buy food at restaurants. It was still cheap, but it was for my budget. So, and there was no jobs, right? So I set my control for the center of the sun, and I pulled it off each time. And as I went around the world in my early 20s with no fucking guardrail, with total freedom, I blazed through women. I blazed through sex. I blazed through towns. I climbed volcanoes. I went where I was like sure death. I fought back when I was attacked. I went down that road when it was, when other people got robbed, like in Manila, in dangerous parts of town. Like I took that taxi. I went through the most dangerous parts of slums of Manila at the dangerous time of day, midnight. I was totally sober, but I wanted to really experience slums. Part of my trip was, a lot of it was slums. I looked for third world countries. Like I went to the Smoky Mountain, which was a mountain that was on fire, and people lived in the mountain, right? So I went to Smoky Mountain. I took a bunch of pictures. I played basketball, this little basketball rim they had at Smoky Mountain. And I was very interested in what happens in those places, because I knew what happens in the mall, from Southern California. I know what happens when you're driving a Mercedes or, a Ford LTD, whatever it is. I know what happens in a lot of things I grew up in, but I had no idea what happens in third world. Not in an air-conditioned room in the third world, but in like the third world. So most of the interesting parts of my trip, and a lot of the ideas I'm bringing you came from insane risk that I took that I wouldn't recommend. Like I would go places like where I went, the guy that was with me got malaria. And he got malaria. Malaria is a lifetime illness. It's like,
what?
It never really goes away.
Really?
Yeah, it flares up. If you really get malaria, it really comes back. Like you get sweats.
Q9 and stuff?
No, that's to not get it.
Oh my God.
No, once you get malaria, you have malaria. It's like part of your body. And you'll have outbreaks. My uncle had it from World War II. So that's why I know.
Oh,
yeah.
Shit.
He would have outbreaks of his malaria. Would come back. And maybe there is something now that cures. I don't know. My uncle had it. He had like sweats, and it was terrible. And it's one of the, like some diseases are like that. They kind of never go away. They kind of always have them, right? And that's why I really applaud people that work on these third world diseases. And that's one of the reasons why I liked parts of Bill Gates' thing. I know it's not very popular to like now, but one of his big things was like to get rid of these third world diseases, like these really simple ones like malaria and waterborne illnesses and mosquito, those kind of diseases. I understand. My friends got them. People I was with got them. So you might not understand them, so you don't really see the value. because you think about maybe AIDS or cancer or something. I see the world differently because of that experience. I know third world people who begged, who sucked dick for 25 cents. Like I was there, people who made insane compromises in their life that I could not imagine making, in order to survive, It didn't make sense to me, but I couldn't, but because I saw it, I saw because in those third world people, there is also a very red pill. They have a very red pill way of looking at the world. Like I went to those people. I lived with those people. Like I've never said this before. And I never even thought it before, but that's really the way I traveled. Like I was most interested in things that were different. Things that were like, you couldn't learn from the outside. Like, have you ever seen Slumdog Millionaire? That Indian movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, it was more Slumdog than that. Like, that was high-class slum. Because that was a slum in the 2000s. I'm talking about a slum in the 80s. Yeah, it was way worse. I was risking, I went to a leper colony. Like, I was in a leper colony when I thought I might get leprosy, because when you went in, you had to agree that you might get leprosy, because they didn't know how leprosy spread then.
Yeah.
They actually thought it might be spread by looking at it. No, because they didn't know yet. They really didn't know. Yeah. And they said, look, we don't know how this is spread. It might be that something in your brain mechanism sees the possibility that arms can fall off and eyes can fall out. And once you see that, your body can create it. And that logic was not totally impossible. Like when you don't understand, that's what people don't realize about science, is the most crazy things can be true. Mm-hmm. And the things that we now accept as very normal were very crazy ideas before. Like the idea that this table is mostly air, or that this stone is mostly air, is, to our understanding, even today, very hard to understand. But it's true. In this concrete stone we're standing on, if you compare the size of the electrons, neutrons, protons, and in relatively space to each other, and the size of them, there is more space between the neutrons, electrons, in the rock that you're standing on than there is between the Earth and the sun. If you look at the comparison, the size of the Earth and the sun, and the scale down, there's more, and think how much air there is between the Earth and the sun.
How much empty space.
Yeah, you can, anytime you put out your arm, it's between the Earth and or you throw a rock, it goes between, or airplane goes, everything goes between the Earth and the sun. Nothing is big enough to go, not fit between the Earth and the sun, nothing that we make, is anywhere close to that, but that is the stones we're standing on. So when you start to have radical ideas about the world, you have to understand that a lot of the ideas that we accept as normal are very crazy ideas. They're almost impossible. This is one of the problems that I think the men's group, MGTOW community has, is there's too much logic. Because the problem with logic is, it's based on what your brain and your eyes and your senses are able to grasp. So a lot of things are there, but we can't grasp them. Like radiation. No matter how much logic you have, when you look at a radioactive rock, you're never going to figure it out. You're never going to, you need instruments to read. Your logic will not be able to somehow penetrate what radiation is. It took many people dying and many machines and, many iterations of things to finally split the atom and understand radiation, what it is and the dangers of it and all that. So the thing is you have to be careful, because your eyes are not the eyes of a bug. A bug can see different wavelengths that you can't see. So they're totally obvious to the bug, totally logical to the bug, because he can see the danger in the radiation. His eyes can see radiation and different waves of light. And he knows something's happening that's going to kill him. But you don't know. And the dog can hear things you can't hear. And animals can sense things. Sometimes that an earthquake is, there's things that other minute motions that your logic, your ability, all of human logic, all of our machines cannot grasp. So you have to understand that a lot of our life is built on it's not even logic. Like, I have to keep hitting myself in the head to believe this stone is more air than between the earth and the sun in comparison to the earth and the sun. Like, that is so difficult for me to understand.
It's not intuitive.
It's not, no, I have to even remind myself. Like, to me, part of it I just have to take on faith, like Jesus or something, like that there's more air, because my brain just doesn't get it. And the other thing my brain cannot get is big and small things. I cannot grasp big and small numbers.
Yeah.
If you tell me a quadrillion and, a 0.00000001, my brain has no comprehension what you're talking about. Like, I don't have the capacity. Maybe a mathematician could or something.
No.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, I will know that one number is very, very small. And I'm going to pretend, okay, so let's say there's somebody who's a real mathematician and they look at me. They know that a lot of things in physics not only do I know nothing about, I have no comprehension of. I have no way of knowing. And they're going to look at me as a very handicapped individual who does not even have any way of knowing. Not only does he not know, he has no way of knowing. Like, there's not even an infinitesimal possibility that I would understand how small something is, how big something is. That my brain just doesn't get it. I focus on what's going on in my life and things they call the middle world, right? That's what it's called. The middle world is what we live in.
Middle Earth.
Yeah, the middle world, right? It's the things that we can see. This is the middle world. Even the smartest guy, you think you have the capacity to understand everything, you're completely out of your mind. Like, you are out of your mind that you're going to study your way into understanding everything. You're just getting the middle world. Just be satisfied with getting the middle world. And you're like, master the middle world. And you are the master of yourself. There's a lot to learn. Like, if there was not a lot to learn, then you could go learning these other things that you'll never encounter. But, like black holes and stuff,
Yeah.
A black hole is actually pretty simple. It takes 10 minutes to understand. It takes 1 minute to understand a black hole. They're super easy to understand. But a lot of ideas are like that. They're just not worth it. Like, fuck it for you. Fuck it. So this is my basic. I hope this explanation give you an idea of where I'm coming from as a person, as a thing, and why it's so subversive. It's very subversive. And because of that, what I started with is, and I don't think this is the most important point anymore, but just there's going to be people that hate you. You have to know that. Who will kill you? Who, like I said in the second Ronin Man episode, I said, there's that Vietnam movie where the guy's so jealous of the guy that they get behind the lines and there's last two guys, they're behind the troop and no one's there to see him. And he goes, basically like, fuck you. And he shoots him. And he's like, no one can hear you now. Because he was so jealous of the guy that as soon as he knew he wasn't going to be caught for murder, he had to kill this guy. Because this guy was the guy who uncovered the lie of this. The guy who shot him was a fake, mean, angry, handicapped, retarded, idiotic individual basing his life on lies. And he had this other guy who was living, to take the analogy further than the movie, but a guy who was totally comfortable with himself. He was making the right decisions, just like you are. You're making the right decisions. You're listening to this. You're reevaluating stuff all the time. And you're making better decisions. You're just this happy guy who is discovering truth. But remember, there is this motherfucker who, and it can be women too, they do not share even like introspection. Like I said about in the beginning, the woman who hated gays that I met, it blew me away. She hated gays. Now, I don't know why. I have no idea why. I had never met anybody who hated. I thought that was I thought that was the media. That, you could, and of course I assumed it was going to be a guy. It was a woman. I was blown away. Like, she just absolutely seething hatred. I can only guess that somebody was gay in her life. And it was so embarrassing for her, she could not handle it. That's my guess. But whatever the reason, it caused her to lose some kind of faith or whatever it was. She had something that she was basing. One of the foundations of her house, of her life, was based on something, and it was not true, and she did not want to be questioned. And if she was confronted with those people that reminded her of that, you got to understand where these people that are the extreme resistance, the extreme conservative, and I'm not saying conservative like politically, I'm saying of old ideas. When I say conservative, what I mean is like there's old ideas and there's people who never change from those old ideas. So they're always going to be the person who wants to get back to the book, back to the rules and the way they were and the way they are. And there's people listening to this right now who are like this. So those people won't be on the channel anymore. You know what I mean? Because what I'm saying is like everything, like do not share laundry in your life, and do not base yourself on fear. Allow that to wash away. Allow yourself to be totally naked before life, where you look like a total fool between you might have wasted 30 years doing something. You might have wasted all your career. You might have lost everything because of this passion you thought you had for something that is totally fake. But by letting that wash away, by letting yourself see the falsity in that, by waiting until the last second to make that hit based on what is really going on, you will, one, it's very enjoyable. You will see a new, people ask me, how do you stay so motivated? They have no idea why. It's all because of what I'm talking about. It's because I am not living like most people. They're covering up. They're not developing themselves. They're lying. They're lying to other. They're not fulfilled. They're all the reasons I said. The combination of those things, and then you add in regret. And so I'll end on this. So I was going to say before, when I said in my 20s I traveled, right? And I was talking to somebody, and they said there was this one guy who was very jealous of me, like the type of burning jealousy and anger we're talking about here, like the part where they would shoot you, like the part where they just cannot stand the sight of you because you bring in everything that just causes them to just melt down with that type of person, right? They had this like burning anger towards me. And these aren't logical things. I liked this guy, actually. I still like this guy. Like, I see him as a sad character, but I like this guy. I have no hatred against this guy. But he hates me because of all these things, because of himself, not because of me, right? And so I was talking to this other person about him who knew him. She knew him very well. And she said, because I said, how could this guy be jealous of me? Because he has everything. Like, this guy has everything you can imagine. Like, every single thing that life offers, he has, almost. And she said, in your 20s, when you traveled the world, I said, but he can travel the world. She said, yeah, but he's not in his 20s, and he's not you. And he will never be able to experience what you experienced in that trip. Because I don't want to overblow it, but my trip was not a normal trip. When I talk about the third, that actually was what I did. I traveled my whole trip in Sweden. Most of it was with this homeless guy, because this guy was very resourceful and funny, and he was a good travel partner for me. So I traveled with this homeless guy, and he taught me a lot of stuff. Like, I learned from people who were totally out of society, out of the box. A lot of my ideas came from people who made enormous sacrifices, but they had gems in their life. They really did have gems. Like, there's something about a homeless guy. He does not have any fake stuff around him, man. He sees life more for what it is. He sees a homeless guy actually would understand what I'm talking about in this episode. He can see through people better than a person in society. And that is very scary for people, because the homeless guy is out of society. I'm not saying like you're adapting a homeless mindset, but one of the things about being kicked out of society is that you do pay a big price. You lose a lot of things, but you lose that kind of need to keep things up. And that allows you to relax and see things differently. And there is something to gain from every type of these people who are not in. You want to be red pill, you have to find people who are not trying to be red pill. They're not like a content creator trying to think red pill. If you really want to think red pill, you need to find people who, they might have died learning the thing you can pick up. Like it might have caused them to have, a disease that killed them. Like they tried, what is that? The Palace of Wisdom quote, right? Is the road of excess leads to the Palace of Wisdom. They went to the excess, maybe not on purpose, where they tested the very limits of the capacity of their body. And through that, they learned where the lines are. And that's what you get from living a life like this, is that the reason why I seem so fearless to people is because everybody thinks the line is like right here, of the limit of what they can do. But actually, I know the line is like 30 feet down the road, right? So like last night when you vomited eating the garlic, that was not a big failure for me.
No.
Because you ate a big piece of garlic and you had never done that. And that caused your stomach to be upset. And so you'll probably eat a smaller piece of garlic next time.
Yeah.
And so you saw the limit of how much you can eat at that time of day with that much in your stomach. And you actually saw the limit. Because before that, you didn't know for sure what would happen, right? And Nelson vomited sprinting, right? And so he might have learned different things because he sprinted the next day. So I'm guessing, I can only guess, but let me guess. I would say you learned that vomiting is not that bad, right? It's like, I vomited, oh well. Like I'm still alive. Like nobody looks down on me. Now, so what? I still got my sprints in. I still got the benefit of that. And now I vomited. So whatever that means, who cares? Like I won't worry about it for now. So maybe if I keep sprinting, I won't vomit. Or maybe if I vomit on that much food, I will. Or maybe if I, you might learn different things by the road of excess leads to the palace. Most people, they're living so much there's so much living in fear. They're so far from the line. That's why they can't find, because again, you can't chip away. There's no Statue of David inside of you. You're not going to chip away to find yourself. You only become yourself by chipping away, and the extreme process of testing and experimentation and guts and open-mindedness and flexibility and humbleness and fearlessness that I'm talking about. And through all that together, you might be lucky enough to be the wushu master who knows what's behind him and knows his own capacities and can live a life that is really, truly the best life, right? That he could live, right? And I think that's always the goal, and just to be honest with yourself when you don't, because you can laugh at yourself. Like John with the kid is a great example, because you might start your journey thinking, as a young guy listening to this, you might think, I would never do that, or I would never do this. But what will happen is, as you go through your life, you will find yourself, because of the things you learn, you will go off into a new thing. And I might do something you do not understand. And you have no way of understanding why I would do it. But trust me, I'm going off the same principles that I always go off. Because this is the way I live. And I don't care what you think. I don't care about the channel. I don't care what you think. I don't care what society thinks. Just because I don't have time for it. It's not like I'm some tough. I don't have time for it. Because the only way I can keep discovering what the fuck is going on in my life is by setting aside all those things. Setting aside. It's nice to have people respect you. I'm not saying it's not good, bad. It's fun. It's nice. People look up to me. And then I might do something where nobody understands me for a few years or whatever. I don't care, because it's more important for me to follow that vein of gold, like I'm gold mining. And gold mining is following a vein. You're following a small vein of gold. It might only be 3 inches or 5 inches or 10 inches or even like a millimeter, centimeter. You're following that vein of gold until it ends. That's what gold mining is. Gold mining is not like oil. Oil, you're finding a big bunch of oil. I went to a lot of gold mines, and I found out that gold mining it's really, you're just like you're finding a little vein of gold. And then the key to the miner is he's chipping away, following that thing down until it finishes. It'll get smaller and smaller as it gets down to the end. And then he's done with that one. And then he goes and finds another vein. That's what I'm doing. I'm finding a vein of gold in something, in an idea, in a concept, in a reality, in a challenge. And then I'm going down that. And I'm like, oh, that's done. And then I'm going down the next one. I'm going down. And so, somebody who is in a different phase of the mind, they might be digging like the big hole to start. And they might think, well, why is this guy going down this tiny little thing of gold? It's because you've already mined everything in there. You're getting down to where you're not getting as much gold. There's not as much gold, but you might get more satisfaction. Like to an old man, swimming a mile with his capacity could be very fulfilling because it's not exactly in the mile. It's in what he has left and what he's able to do, right? And that gives him some satisfaction because he, just like you, waiting till the last microsecond to hit the ball, you're getting up there and saying, well, what is available to me, right? Where is the ball? What are the physics? What's here now where I am with what I have, right? So that calculation is going to be very unique based on each person, right? So there is nobody who's truly red pill. The only thing that you can get, I guess the highest, is that if you see somebody make smart decisions enough, you're going to say, well, I don't know what he's doing, but I'm very interested to see where that one goes. Because I know the way he's done in this and this and this, and this does not seem any different, although it seems very different on the surface. The way he's acting, he's going into this thing. It may look the same. It's kind of like when we go to the beach today, and we are in traffic, and when I go to Walmart's the best example. When I go to Walmart, I am going to look just like a typical American to everybody in that store.
Yeah.
Right? I will look totally American. I speak English. I will be buying stuff that's available in the store. I will be using US dollars. There's nothing anybody could see. I'm wearing clothes I got locally, thrift store. There's some kind of clothes from around here, whatever. And there's no way. And just like we went to the Asian market last Saturday. There was no way when I walked in for someone to know who I was in that market. Like they had no idea. They thought we were lost. They kept asking us, do you need help? As we walked around. And they were like very helpful and nice. Yeah. But they had no comprehension that in many ways, right. I'm more Asian than a lot of the people that were eating there. Because a lot of the people who were eating there, I'm going to go on a limb here. A lot of people that are Asian American are not that Asian. Just like I'm not that Finnish. I'm Finnish American. But there's a limit to my Finnishness, right? And I believe, this is just what I believe, but let's say an Asian person goes to Finland and lives there for 30 years and fits into the Finnish culture, learns Finnish, goes through all the struggles, writes the language, reads the language.
Fucks Finnish girls.
Understands, fucks Finnish girls, lives there, and fully integrates into the society. I would give him respect. I think there's a limit. Okay, no matter, I was raised in pretty Finnish type of family. Like, we definitely had a Finnish way of looking at things. And my parents grew up in a Finnish village in northern Minnesota where they actually spoke Finnish still, And a lot of people spoke Finnish in that village. My grandfather was totally fluent in Finnish, like native. My grandfather was born in America and he was native Finnish. That's how isolated this place was. So that's where they're from. And I was raised going back to that village, right? And eating a lot of Finnish food and being 100%, Finnish blood, and being interested in Finland. My brother married a Finnish girl. And I went to Finland. Like, I actually went to Finland many times. I learned Swedish. I can't speak it anymore, but I learned it at the time. And a lot of Finland speaks Swedish. And so it was conquered by Sweden many times. So yeah, there's a lot of Swedish-speaking Finns. So it's not that different. There's parts of, you can be very Finnish and not really speak Finnish all that well, right? You could be a Swedish-speaking Finn. So I was like on the more extreme Finnish-American Finnish, I think, I would have to say. But there's a limit to how Finnish I am. There is a limit, and I know that limit. I know that I'm not Finnish. I'm not like this idiot. Like, I see these idiots on St. Patrick's Day who run around Boston and they think they're Irish.
Yeah.
And that's fun that's their little game, but you can't take yourself that seriously. You have to know that you look like an idiot to a lot of people. And believe me, Irish people, they look at you as being pretty lame, trust me. Because you're like brown-nosing them to be like them, and they're like actually trying to get out of Ireland to move to make some real money, or this is often the situation. Like, that's why you met them, is because they live in Boston. And they might have been totally not into being in Ireland, right? And they moved there because they wanted more opportunities, and they see the locals as being too close-minded. And then here you are, like, just, you cannot get enough of the fucking four-leaf clover idea. And they're like, I don't know if you realize this, but leprechauns don't actually exist, you know? Like, that's, you logically know that, but there's some part of you that thinks there's some magical thing. You can, like, process alcohol better than other people or something, or like you somehow are this alcohol, green beer drinking leprechaun. Like, this is one of the things that I think every guy needs to hear this, is don't be one of these guys. And there's a lot of, like, same with the people that go to the Holy Land, same thing. There's a lot of people who, they look like total fools to the locals. And believe me, I have a friend who owns one of the biggest tour companies in Israel. And he told me this. He told me he has no respect for a lot of people coming on tour because they're almost like lost in fantasy. They're so far from knowing what's under their feet. And I'm not talking about religion here. I'm talking about this like great, you know, like, oh, the Israelites and the Gentiles. These people were only a few miles apart. I mean, the divisions that were written, like all of Israel is smaller than Orange County, right?
Yeah.
It's like all these people that you think are so different when you actually go there. Right. And I'm not saying they're not real. I'm not saying that anything about any religion here. I'm just saying, like, a lot of this cultural, almost like, don't be. Here's a better example. There's a guy who was so into the Beatles. He was so into the Beatles that he flew to England and he walked on Abbey Road around there's a crosswalk. They took a picture on one of their big albums, right? With the four guys that were walking across the crosswalk. He was walking across the crosswalk, he hit by a car, and he was permanently injured because he was so lost in fantasy in the Beatles and recreating that he just walked back and forth across this, and he was like living and singing songs of what he was doing, and he got hit by a car and he permanently injured, right? And that is you in some ways. So don't be that fool. Whatever the idea is, your fantasy might be the men's group. It might be a religion. It might be your ethnicity. It might be, you know, whatever you put too much stakes into. Like you're in too deep on some stuff. You know, you went too far. You're cheering for laundry. You're walking across that fucking crosswalk over and over and ignoring modern life and cars and living, you know. So like that is like when you start I always laugh at people like this. I'll end on this. I don't know what the big lesson is after all that. I think the lesson was in listening to this whole thing. You know, that's where the goal was. Not in this closing. There's nothing I can say that's more powerful than what I said.
Right. I can summarize all of it.
There's nothing they can put into one idea.
You have to repeat it all.
That's right. I'd have to do the whole thing again, and I couldn't do it again. Because now I said it for the first time, and I'm bored with the idea. I'll never talk about this again. Like, I'm done. Because this is like that shot of volleyball. I was up there, the shot was there, I took the shot. I was very proud of myself, very happy of that shot. And then it was done. And I move on to the next